Hello and welcome to another cosplay video. I'll take you through the process of making my Kim Kitsuragi cosplay from the game Disco Elysium. This is a dialogue-heavy point-and-clicker game where you play as an unusual detective trying to solve a murder mystery. And making friends, I guess. If you've clicked on this video and for some reason haven't played the game, thank you. And don't worry, I'm not going to spoil anything besides minor details about Kim's costume, but I would suggest you go and check it out for yourself. Kim is your partner in the game, and there is a lot I could say to describe him. Mainly, what you need to know is that he is a well-written character in a well-written game, and he's a perfect companion to the main character. Now let's break down the costume. The character's appearances are not consistent in any of the art for the game, which means I get to choose what I want to include. Let's start off with the jacket. It is told us in-game that this is an aviator's bomber jacket made out of nylon. The 3D model in the game has a bulky jacket with wide shoulders, while the portrait on the other hand is slim, but both of them, including the box art, shows the shoulder seams. The portrait and box art has a high collar, similarly to a 50s sports jacket. He has visible diagonal pockets on the outside, and pockets in the lining. And both the 3D model and the box art shows him wearing a crop jacket. This makes inserting normal pockets difficult, and crop jackets like this typically have outside sewn pockets instead. I don't like these pockets and I would prefer my jacket to be longer, so I'll make it a normal bomber jacket length. As it so happens, the game studio sells this jacket and they've done the same thing. The sound jacket has a really nice lining, which I am going to steal. I made a pattern by tracing an oversized pilot's jacket that I own. This is a really simple pattern. Since the game takes place in March, I made this a warmer transitional jacket. I chose the only neon orange nylon fabric that I could find, a heavy duty one meant for workwear, and a brown knitted rib for the cuffs and collar. Then, realizing I also need seam allowances, I make a facing with these funny little bump outs where I'll be inserting the pockets. Okay, so I'll probably never need to have a book this size in my pocket, but if I were, it would be placed right here. So let's make a facing that would accommodate that. On the other side, I'm gonna make a bit of a different pocket. So instead of having one big one, we're gonna do the exact same thing, but this time we're gonna accommodate for phone and I guess car keys, the necessities you will need to bring on your person. I'm continuing the facing in the back and making this little thing that makes you able to hang your coat. If you know what it's called, I'd like to know. For the facing, I'm making pastellated pockets. I'll be adding a lot of freight check to this entire costume. I'm aiming for this to be bulletproof. Once the fabric is pleated and ironed in place, I sew in the ditch to secure them. At this point, I attach the back to the fronts. I'll also be adding the bias tape to the edges, but I like the idea of it being a contrasting color, and so I chose blue similarly to what is done in the portrait. It's a reminder to keep cool after all. I happen to have a matching color in my scraps, which I'm using for the pockets. This is also sewn in the ditch, as I'm trying to avoid visible top stitching.
I don't know how visible this is going to end up being in the video, but I cut the facing wrong. I didn't add seam allowance, it seems. Well, it fits in the top, it's higher than it should be, it was supposed to be down here. And I don't really want to add any extra fabric up here, because it's just gonna mess with the color and be a bit bulky. I can replace this part, but I don't want to remove this thing. So then we have to move everything up, and that means I need to add a bit of patching down here because I messed it up.
And finally, the actual lining. You should be so proud of me. I usually go for extremely colorful linings, and there were some good options available. But I thought, what would Kim choose? And I picked the boring option, the brown. And it ended up looking perfect. The lining is cut out of the same pattern as the jacket, the shoulders are sewn, and then I'm pinning on the facing.
When it comes to these pockets, I just want to sew it on while the lining is still in one piece. I'm being hopeful that that will make it so that it doesn't shift too much. After I've sewn it, I'm just gonna cut out the inside of it, and that's the facing finished.
Since this is a simple make, I'm trying my best to make all the seams look perfect, as this is what will make the jacket look good in the end.
Well, it's not pretty.
Then for the front pockets. I ended up making this as complicated as humanly possible, but I ended up being able to cut the pockets and the pastellated part of it in one piece. I'm using my seamometer to be absolutely sure all my seams are even and securing the flap for the stitch in the ditch. The reason being that this heavy duty fabric is one visible top stitching away from looking like I should be directing traffic. Or in other words, my statement jacket is bordering on looking like a uniform. I chose to make my sleeve pattern in 2 pieces to make them more fitted. The character always wears them rolled up, but it's one of the little things. Once the sleeves are inserted, the side seams are sewn and I can start assembling the jacket. I liked the collar height of my original jacket and decided to copy this. It was a very simple 10 cm high rectangle. The cuffs were 5 cm high and the width was the same as my arm. The cuffs were sewn on one side before flipping the sleeve inside out and attaching it to the lining. Then I do the exact same thing to the collar, attaching it to the outside and the lining separately. For the ribbing at the bottom, I simply tried it on, stretching it to what felt comfortable. Once again, it's 5 cm wide, and when the jacket is worn, it reaches my high hip or low waist, depending on your gender, which makes it 5 cm longer than what it looks like Kim's jacket does. I attached this similarly to the other ribbed parts. It made the lining creep when worn, so I went back and stitched the layers together later. I had measured everything to fit my zipper beforehand, but it did look a bit bulky in the end. It was basted on by machine before it was stitched down. The inside was sewn by hand. I remembered last minute to add shoulder pads, the choice being between these normal ones and the ones used for raglan sleeves. I chose the latter ones because it gave a more rounded silhouette. I should have added decorations before finishing the jacket, but I procrastinated it, not knowing what I wanted to do. On the back and on the left sleeve he has halogen patches, making him recognized as a cop in the world. They are white in the game, but I wanted them to be more fun and made them out of iron-on holographic vinyl. I based the size and placement on the 3D model in the game. I would like to note that the size and placement is not the same on Kim's jacket and the main characters. Why is that? And shouldn't it be standardized? I made the patch in the front out of some silk that I embroidered to match the one in the portrait. This was the only time I didn't use freight check and I regretted it. The stitching on my machine didn't look good for this, but even if my own stitching was sparse and uneven, it accidentally ended up with the same sketchy look as in the portrait. I doubt that anyone is interested in a pant tutorial, so I'll try to speed through this. He wears cargo pants, they have pockets, and they vary in width in every piece of art. I like the baggy ones in the box art, but I would also like to keep the high waist of the 3D model. In the end, I made mine wide enough to accommodate a soda bottle in both pockets, truly the only criteria for congoers. I ended up using an old Burda pattern that I've used before to make work pants. This pattern features wide legs and a flat ass, exactly what I'm looking for. His pants are usually brown but occasionally looks green. My fabric is army green and was the best match for the orange. I follow the pattern but I'm extending the waist. Then I decided to be creative. I didn't want pocket flaps at my hip and decided to make this thing. I also decided to make double pockets because I would surely lose anything I put in the bottle pockets. I didn't think you could see any pockets at all in the game, but if you're in the right light you can clearly see his pants has normal jeans pockets or possibly a horizontal pocket flap. I can tell I was tired when making this because I didn't pause filming once. I have hours of this. Once they were stitched in, I sewed up the side seams and closed the pockets. The pocket opening was stitched down and the end strengthened with a tight zigzag stitch. It wouldn't be cargo pants without the signature pockets. I made these twice as big as the pattern, seams were overlocked and ironed in, the top was folded in 1 + 2 centimeters and stitched down. The pocket flap was stitched together using the pattern as a guide. Then they were top stitched onto the side. Moving on to the fly, it doesn't matter how many times I've done this, it's still tricky to get right. Unfortunately, the only zipper I had on hand was a contrasting one, but I had decided to finish this today. With that done, I stitched up the back and the inner leg seam. I made belt loops by folding strips of fabric in on itself and top stitching down. This is a funny curved waistband in several pieces, which I've curved even more to fit the high waist. The sides are sewn together, leaving the back open. I added a lot of fabric to the front, which I'm folding in. It makes them look more suit-like, in my opinion. Both the lining and outer waistband is attached to the waist in one go. And then I'm adding the belt loops. I could have attached them before sewing the waistband on, but I had more control this way. The loops are stitched down 1 cm below the waistband, ironed up and tucked into the waistband, which is top stitched down. Then I chose a button for the front. My machine doesn't sew zippers or buttonholes, so I do this by hand. Once again, freight check for that bulletproof finish. I tried them on and decided on the length. They were hemmed with a 1 + 2 cm hem. I didn't add any elastic to these as I didn't want extra bulk. The very last thing I do is stitch up the center back. I made it easy for myself to adjust this if need be. Then to something more fun, gloves. I've had this fabric in my stash for years. It's a faux leather suede looking thing. I chose to follow this pattern, and since my fabric might fray, I'll be gluing a lot. This will also be mostly done by hand. Kim has at least 2 pairs of gloves. The one in the box art, the driving gloves, and the ones worn by the 3D model in the game, which are pilot gloves. That last one also wears one of them folded up on one arm. You can also see that they close with a zipper because of the split. Anyway, I've decided to make both. For the driving gloves, I cut out the strap, which sit right above the wrist. The ones he wears in the box art looks a bit cartoony. I made my straps more narrow, just so that they would fit me better. I draw the cutout on a square of fabric that I'll sew to the back of the hand. The remaining fabric is folded in, ironed and top stitched down. They are top stitched down. My sewing machine really hated this fabric and I had to pull it through the machine. I still ended up stitching around the entire strap for stability. Lastly, I hammered in a snap button. For the pilot gloves, I cut out a piece of brown knit. This will be folded double. I'm adding some fabric to the palm to make a cutout again. Here I'll be inserting a zipper. After trying on the gloves with the jacket, I trimmed down the knit a little. I pinned and stitched the knit to the glove, leaving the tiniest bit of seam allowance. I ironed it flat and started inserting the only brown non-metal zipper I could find. I'm also aware that it's an invisible zipper and I'm not treating it as one. I just thought it would look better than my other options. The glove part was stitched by machine while the knit was sewn by hand. The lining was folded to the inside and whip stitched down. Then I added some scrap fabric to the end of the zipper for comfort, and that's it, they're done. Overall, I like how this turned out. The only thing stopping me from living in this jacket full time are the marks on the back. The only thing making it visible as a costume or uniform to others. I don't mind being high visibility, but I don't like wearing merch. For a long time I tried to figure out how to make detachable patches for this reason, but none of them would have looked as good. The pant pockets were made in the wrong material. They should have been made in a synthetic fabric. This made them so annoying to use that I'm planning on replacing them. The gloves fitted me when I stitched them together, but after adding even more glue on my seams, they became a little too tight. But seeing as this was my first attempt at making gloves, I am very happy with the end result. I got to practice some of my tailoring with this costume, and I like being able to make something simple every now and then where I don't have to think too much. Good luck with your own projects. Until next time.